This is episode 20 of Art, Why I Stuck with a Junkie Jazzman. In episode 19, Art and I got married. In episode 20, we moved to a little shack on Vesper Avenue in the San Fernando Valley. Moving to the valley. We moved not because we wanted to, but because we were forced to by our landlady, who lived right beneath us in our attic apartment in Venice. Art referred to her as Miss Looney Tunes because she often sang of an evening in a keening, high-pitched yowl. She was old and was getting nuttier by the day. While we were away on a short trip, Art performing somewhere, she hired someone to break into our attic apartment. I had changed the locks after she started walking in at all hours. We met the intruder later, a teenager who stopped us on the street and volunteered the information. He told us he had used a ladder to climb in through the kitchen window. He opened the door and let the landlady in to prowl around. She gave herself away when she cackled at me triumphantly that she knew my husband had been in a mental institution. She read part of the Straight Life manuscript. She also had our power cut off while we were gone. Sodden food rotted in the fridge. Water dripped out on the floor. When I asked her why she turned off the electricity, she said she did it to save money. I offered her more money. I wanted to live there forever in that historic beach town, in our seaside nest with the gleaming palm fronds flapping and the sunsets, where my cousin Mirandy sold her gorgeous custom suedes and leathers and lived just a short hike away in a beat-up cottage beside a duck-filled canal. Venice then was filled with artists and musicians. I wanted to chat every day with the hippie shop owners who cut hair, designed clothes and jewelry, and dealt antiques and imports. The landlady said that because my husband was a nut, we had to leave. I tried to find something similar in the classifieds and haunted all of Venice, cruising up and down the streets looking for a place. The area in those days was seedy and unpretentious, but its property owners had realistic ambitions and rental prices were already escalating. It grieved me to quit Venice. I still miss it, even though it's no longer what it was, and neither am I. Everyone has these little pockets of contentment, of perfect balance in their memories, and everything changes. We moved to, quotes, the Valley, the San Fernando Valley, an old suburb of L.A. on the other side, many think the wrong side, of the Hollywood Hills. It's hotter and smoggier and sometimes windier in the valley. In the near valley, there exists a greater San Fernando Valley, an outlying and still largely agricultural part, irregularly settled, that leads after about 45 minutes on the 101 through hilly terrain to the Pacific coast, then to Ventura, Santa Barbara, and Big Sur. The near valley is composed of small post-World War II ticky-tacky single-family houses, low-rent, often poorly maintained square stucco apartment buildings, and squat commercial structures for small-time manufacturing, distributing, printing, auto repair, and so on, and drab strip malls, 7-Elevens, nail salons, tiny Thai restaurants, and pizza parlors. Much of LA's Mexican population, documented and not, lives there. Around Van Nuys, where we wound up, there are areas of big houses and old beauty, but not many. It has its own aesthetic. I found it interesting as a photographer. As an ex-resident, I'd have to say there are prettier places to live. Venice, where we came from at the beach, or Hollywood and Echo Park, shabby but rich with history, literary, cinematic, and personal for Art and me, and with trees and hills and things. Interestingly enough, at least to us, Van Nuys and surrounds were considered central to the studios in Burbank and Hollywood for TV and the movies. And from there, it was an easy drive to the airport, LAX, which, as Art's career made its ascent, we took advantage of. A friend of a friend found out about the availability of a little Van Nuys pad, and so Art and I were installed and remained for the rest of Art's life in this cramped, dark, falling apart little house in Mexican gangland, next door to a low brick plating factory on a small but busy commercial street in Van Nuys. Only in retrospect does that little wooden shack seem awful. At the time, it wasn't bad. It was a whole house with 2 small bedrooms, and there was a service porch in back where I could install my darkroom. It had a little yard in front, surrounded by a low black iron fence, and there was a dirt driveway beside the yard and a garage, leaning at almost 45 degrees with the roof falling in by millimeters per year, like the ages of the earth, slowly. Because passers-by could look past the tiny yard right through our windows, I covered them with contact paper and then with bamboo blinds. I bought a bunch of thrift shop lamps, rewired them, and planted several in each gloomy room. My mother and I picked up some cream-painted dressers at a thrift shop, and I antiqued them. I peeled the glamorous, ghastly marbled mirror tiles off the kitchen wall above the sink and stuck a giant poster over the damaged plaster I created. Our rent was unbelievably low, $250 in 1976. Over the years, I worked out a tenuous deal with our sloppy, tearful landlady, Elena. I always see her in my mind's eye with mascara running. She was a mysteriously accented divorcee between 40 and 70, plump and overdone in ruffles and gold with dyed black curls, usually cradling in her arms little silky, wildly yipping dogs in satin hair ribbons with rheumy eyes. Whenever she stopped by, she told me stories of crazed tenants and her bad romances with sexy, coke-addicted movie producers. I told her I would repair everything myself, improve the property. She'd never be disturbed if she would give us low-rate yearly leases. We both honored that bargain. While Art and I lived there, I had the place rewired. I repainted the inside myself, put up wallpaper in the bedrooms, built trellises on the porch and planted vines. I had fire-safe bars put on all the windows. I cherished that house. Art liked it too, living unself-consciously in the midst of immigrants and gangs. He liked how dim, sealed off it was. And there I had a real darkroom with running water and my very own bed and workroom. I've always found it nearly impossible to sleep in a shared bed. I need absolute silence and total darkness in order to sleep, and I sleep lightly. And if I'm awakened, my first emotion is keen disappointment, then bitter anger at whatever woke me. My partner's changed breathing or muscular twitch, my partner. And I'm wide awake and silently enraged for the rest of the night. When I lived and slept with my daughter's father, Barrett, I kept a bottle of wine by the bed. A gulp or two softened the blow of waking in the middle of the night. And if it didn't put me to sleep again, it stupefied me, so I didn't mind so much. In Van Nuys, Art had the master bedroom up in front, where he kept the TV running all night long and woke and smoked and fell asleep and burned holes in the mattress. In the back of that house, on the other side of our connecting bathroom, I finally got my own exclusive sanctuary with typewriter, telephone, personal photos, and my own private, peaceful, narrow little bed. The next section is called Abandoning the Book. By 1975, I'd done some serious editing on the biography and thought it was time to find a publisher. I submitted the manuscript to my cousin Evie's agent at that time, who sent it to Seymour Lawrence, Playboy Press, and a few other publishers who weren't interested, who disparaged it as a tape-recorded transcript of limited appeal only to jazz aficionados. I thought the problem was these people couldn't understand it. So I wrote letters to the agent responding to those criticisms and at the same time defining, at least for myself, what the book was. Writing those letters comforted me. My clear ideas, literary comparisons, wisecracks, and swelling talk about an American document briefly buoyed me up. At the same time, I felt deep down that I might be full of shit. Who was I, anyway? At times, I'd read the manuscript to myself and clearly see the dramatic structure I'd imposed, the juxtapositions, witty and profound, the rhythms I had built on arts, and the poetry, imagery, poignancy, and charm of his language. And imagine I must be deluded. I'd read other parts which seemed empty and boring. I gave the manuscript to a few people, but what I got back from them was the vaguest and most hedged approval, or my cousin Mirandy's outright indignation and disbelief at Art's contention in the heroin chapter that he used heroin to keep from acting on his sexual impulses. Although I must admit her criticism made me try harder to get to the heart of the matter, working more intensely on that chapter than I did on any other, working Art harder too, badgering him, really. Where this project was concerned, I got no encouragement except from Art. I know I must have been crushed by the rejections, but I have no memory of being crushed. I have a tendency to not notice what I feel. I have a genius for busily distracting myself. I probably told myself that the book would be discovered someday by people who would understand it. What I tell myself, in fact, about this one. Meanwhile, there was lots of other stuff to do. The reception of Straight Life, 5 years later, by critics who saw in it what I did, who praised it at least as lavishly and intelligently as I had in my letters to that agent, made me feel at last that I was probably right all along. But in the long run, I guess it doesn't matter. A favorite story of mine has always been Kafka's The Hunger Artist. In it, a man becomes a performer and celebrity, famous for his ability to fast for many days. The fad for his skill passes, and he's left to continue and extend his oeuvre in the backlot of some nowhere sideshow, neglected and ignored. No one, not even he himself, notices the records he creates and persistently exceeds. And he comments in the end that, after all, there wasn't any food he liked to eat. So you do what you do with obsessive care, not for fame or approval, but because you can't do otherwise. And so there's nothing to applaud. I wanted the book published. I craved appreciation, but I really did it because I'd started and I couldn't stop. Now the story was told and it had been rejected. I guess I didn't want to think about it for a while. I occupied myself with Art's career, and Art was working more and more. We'd surrendered welfare and had even had to pay some back. Some interesting, even glamorous jobs had started to come in.